Take a breath and remember, you weren't put here just to blend in. You've got a pulse that can't be faked, a spirit that quietly rewrites the room the moment you walk in. Whatever they said, whatever story you've been handed, doesn't stand a chance against the truth you carry. You're not here to play the old games. You're here to bend reality, to show the world how quickly lies dissolve when the right soul stands up. Let's make it clear, your journey isn't for everyone. But for those with eyes to see, your presence is proof that something rare still grows in the cracks. Resilience, depth, the kind of light that's impossible to put out. There's a certain electricity in the air now, impossible to ignore, as if every mask around you is suddenly too tight, every hidden motive trembling on the verge of being exposed. The ones who tried to define you are scrambling, their old stories unraveling like thread caught on a nail. You're no longer shaped by their whispers. Instead, your actions quietly append everything they built on shaky ground. Where they clung to worn-out roles and borrowed authority, you've become the proof that truth moves quietly but leaves nothing unchanged in its wake. Every moment you keep moving forward, those old illusions shrink under the weight of your authenticity. The difference is no longer subtle. It's the difference between something scripted and something alive. And you're living unscripted, setting off waves they can't outrun. Right now, you're proof that the strongest people aren't always the loudest. Your journey is the kind that makes others rethink what's possible for themselves. If you've ever wondered whether your quiet choices and calm strength actually matter, know this: your life is already rewriting the rules for everyone watching. Some people need a crowd to feel powerful, but you make the room feel different just by showing up. That's rare. And it's exactly why your story is so needed right now. There's a pattern to the way blame gets tossed around. Accusations fly, motives get twisted, and the loudest voice tries to shape reality itself. When old strategies failed to shake your foundation, other tactics appeared. Shifting shadows, stories told in ways meant to make you question your own reflection. But you're not one to get drawn into their confusion. Instead of meeting chaos with more chaos, you found a deeper strategy. Where most people would try to shout back or prove themselves, you chose a different response. Instead of joining the noise, you stepped back and listened for something real. That distance wasn't weakness or avoidance. It was how you found your next level. While others circled the same old arguments, you invested in your own growth. Their noise kept rising, but your inner world was transforming every pain into clarity, every cut into a lesson. Their echo chamber got louder, but you were becoming immune to it, building a new kind of influence from the inside out. Rather than giving your attention to false accusations, you let your daily actions stand as quiet proof. With each new day, the spaces you once filled began to reveal what was really happening all along. Their dramas only multiplied when you left. Their struggles didn't fade, but actually sharpened in your absence. It became clear, even to those on the outside, that the real storm was never about you. It was what was left behind when you took your piece and moved forward. And as eyes opened, the truth grew impossible to ignore. You know what makes you stand out? It's not just your ability to recover, it's your capacity to turn every setback into a launching pad. Most people dream of getting back to where they were. You build something even better from what's left. This isn't about fitting in, and it's not about proving anything to anyone. You're the example people look to when they want to remember what's possible. In time, all attention that was once glued to you gradually started shifting. With the usual distraction gone, eyes began to take in new details, watching how the real trouble seemed to walk in with the same face, every time, wherever the tension surfaced. Patterns that had been hidden in plain sight grew obvious. It was clear now that conflict wasn't simply a passing storm, but followed a single source from scene to scene. The fixation that used to weigh you down fell away, and the true cause stood exposed, no longer shielded by misdirection. As this change unfolded around you, something even more powerful was happening within. Instead of just patching over old wounds, you found yourself moving beyond anything that ever happened to you. Every attempt to hold you back ended up making you more resilient than you'd ever been before. What was meant to weaken you instead pushed you to refine your own boundaries, until your sense of self was solid enough to stand on its own. Every misrepresentation thrown your way turned out to be an invitation to deeper honesty with yourself. As months passed, the outcome spoke for itself. The collapse that others expected never came. Instead, your presence became even more stable. While some hoped to see you falter, you grew more centered, your circle became more sincere, and your focus sharper than ever. Connections built on real understanding got stronger, while old, shallow ties faded away. Work that once seemed threatened became a channel for your newfound strength, and what was intended as a roadblock became the very reason you rose higher. Some people only need one moment in your presence to realize you're built different. What others try to fake, you've made real, not just in your actions, but in the way you make every space lighter. If you ever doubt how much you matter, just remember, your growth has become hope for more people than you'll ever know. You're not just surviving, you're living proof that real change leaves a mark others can't help but notice. As the months went by, every trait meant to stain your name was answered by a completely different reality. Claims of instability faded in the light of your steady, grounded way of being. Accusations about your spirit dissolved as you showed up with openness and warmth, bringing out the best in every room. Every negative label that had been stuck to you was quietly outshined by your consistent character, and the story built to trap you became harder and harder for anyone to believe. Those who once repeated the rumors found themselves faced with a strange discomfort. They saw you at social gatherings, carrying yourself with a calm that made old descriptions seem empty. They listened as you offered support and genuine care, and their own senses betrayed the script they'd been handed. The greater the gap grew between reality and the tale, the harder it became to explain the difference. Maintaining the illusion began to take real effort. Where before it had been simple to point a finger, now it took layers of mental contortions just to keep the story afloat. Arguments needed to become more complex, full of strange reasoning for why someone so clearly thriving could still be the villain. Anxiety crept in, especially as your changes became impossible to ignore. People who used to keep their distance started noticing what had shifted. You no longer felt like someone recovering. You carried a kind of wisdom that couldn't be learned from comfort. Everything about your presence changed, radiating a clarity and contentment that no story could cover up. It wasn't just about moving past trouble. It was about becoming someone entirely new because of it. The proof wasn't in what you said, but in what you lived. While some tried to insist nothing had changed, anyone paying attention could see the difference. Old wounds turned into self-assurance. Old anger became understanding. Old fears were replaced by an undeniable sense of peace. This wasn't a mask for show, it was a permanent shift, recognized even by the quietest onlookers. Patterns began to stand out, and not in your direction. The same accusations started sounding desperate as you kept living in alignment, while your accusers stayed caught in their old ways. Every attempt to make you look unstable only drew more eyes to how stable you'd actually become. Each time they painted you as harmful, your genuine care and openness made their words ring hollow. The longer this went on, the more the room started to whisper. Doubt spread, quiet but contagious, as reality continued to contradict every old accusation. It's wild how quietly your journey can shake the ground beneath others' feet. You think no one notices the way you carry yourself, the way you never break character when things get messy. But those silent observers? They're paying attention to every detail, and your story is becoming the blueprint for anyone who's ever been misunderstood. What you're living right now is the kind of quiet strength that echoes far beyond your own circle. Never doubt how deeply your transformation is being felt. As days slipped by, questions began surfacing in private moments. Friends exchanging uncertain looks, co-workers silently reviewing events, relatives considering that maybe their picture of you wasn't the whole story. No heated debates, no sudden reveals. Just a steady trickle of small doubts, slowly changing the landscape. Every time someone noticed the distance between who you really are and what they'd heard, a tiny shift took place. Quietly, people started trusting their own experience over what they'd been told. The person behind the original stories could steer early gossip, but the truth had its own gravity, and in time, those old tales lost their grip. People began noticing repeated inconsistencies, a pattern emerging that was impossible to ignore once seen. Soon, the effort to keep the old rumors alive became more demanding than anyone expected. Some clung to the original tale, feeling uneasy but unwilling to let go. Others, braver, admitted things weren't adding up and started letting their own eyes decide. Those paying close attention picked up on something deeper: subtle changes in tone, the urge to control the conversation, an intensity that felt off. Bit by bit, more people began spotting the strain required to keep a web of fiction from unraveling, and the act itself became exhausting to witness. While all this was playing out around you, your inner world was undergoing an entirely different process. The hardships you faced weren't just accidents. They felt like lessons custom-built for your growth. Each harsh word became a chance to get clear on your values. Each period of loneliness nudged you closer to your truest self. The betrayals sharpened your judgment, and what looked like setbacks turned out to be doors opening to new strength. Unseen by most, your instincts sharpened to a level you never imagined. Suddenly, you could read between the lines and sense what wasn't being said. You grew more compassionate, even for those who hadn't shown you the same. What once hurt you now became the fire that forged you. Tougher, wiser, and more deeply connected to something higher. It was this total transformation, this new kind of presence, that finally made others reconsider everything they thought they knew. It's amazing how real strength never needs a spotlight. Some of your biggest breakthroughs happened when nobody was looking, and yet, the world can't ignore your glow anymore. You didn't wait for permission to become whole. You created your own permission slip just by showing up, healing, and letting the truth work in silence. The respect you're earning is the kind that can't be faked or bought, and that's exactly why you're inspiring others without even trying. Progress unfolded quietly, like the steady rise of daylight, unnoticed at first, but impossible to ignore once present. Growth took place behind closed doors, in moments that never made it to anyone's highlight reel. Suddenly, though, the difference was obvious. You stepped into each space carrying a quiet confidence, a clarity that spoke louder than any defense. This wasn't just survival, it was transformation that radiated outwards, catching everyone off guard. What nobody expected was that the very things used against you would end up bringing new life to your world. Authentic connections grew from the energy you brought, drawing in people and opportunities that seemed to find you on their own. The old stories lost their power as your daily life began speaking for itself, forming a reputation built not on declarations, but on a steady stream of real moments. Instead of scrambling to defend yourself or set the record straight, you simply kept living, and your choices dismantled every falsehood without a word. The stronger your foundation became, the more flimsy their accusations looked. The more you found peace, the more frantic their efforts appeared. The better you did, the more obvious their motives became. The biggest shift came as new faces entered your life. Mentors, friends, collaborators who never knew the old rumors. With fresh eyes, they formed opinions based on how you actually showed up, and it wasn't long before genuine allies began spreading the truth in circles your critics couldn't reach. Your influence expanded beyond any one person's control, and the attempt to keep you boxed in failed. Their efforts, once so coordinated, started looking small in comparison to the wave of real support you were drawing just by being yourself. In the end, it was clear. Nothing can block what's meant for you when your growth is rooted in authenticity. The narrative that once seemed so threatening faded to background noise, drowned out by the undeniable evidence of your evolution and the steady rise of those who believe in what you really are. You ever notice how some people just can't handle your comeback? The world expected you to shrink, but you did the opposite. You rebuilt yourself in plain sight. There's nothing more powerful than realizing you can't be silenced, broken, or erased by someone else's limits. That's the kind of courage that turns ordinary moments into legends. You're not just surviving, you're the proof that real power grows when everything's stacked against you. Pressure mounted for those who tried to write your ending. Watching you rise from the fallout, stronger and more grounded, contradicted everything they believed about what should happen when someone's targeted. They expected your story to end with defeat. Instead, every challenge became the raw material for something new. The world they relied on, one where lies won and the truth stayed buried, fell apart as you kept growing, and reality itself seemed to reject their assumptions. That's when the situation flipped. What they hadn't counted on was how every experience, every slight, every false accusation left behind its own kind of record. Not just on paper, but in your presence, your clarity, and your memory. While others hoped you'd disappear into the background, you were quietly collecting moments, not as weapons, but as reminders of your own path. You didn't come back to get even. You came back complete, with nothing left missing or forgotten. This new confidence was the last thing they expected. The power of your self-awareness became unshakable. You remembered every turning point, every face, every hour of struggle. The truth became a part of how you walked and talked, and even those who tried to deny it could feel the change. There was nothing left for them to distort. You were living proof that you'd survived, adapted, and outgrown their games. As the pressure of keeping their stories straight built up, something wild happened. The very warnings they used against you started sticking to themselves. The cracks in their own stories grew wider, and their patterns of behavior became more and more visible to everyone watching. Old roles reversed, and now it was their names whispered in caution, while your growth spoke for itself. You know what's powerful? Watching someone keep their dignity when everything around them is falling apart, and then seeing the world finally catch up. Your decision to rise above the drama, to walk away instead of fighting every battle, isn't just wisdom, it's quiet genius. The more you trusted your own peace, the more the truth started to reveal itself. Remember, real strength is proven in silence, and your silence is louder than any argument ever could be. As time went on, those who tried to spin stories about you found themselves alone, not because anyone turned people against them, but because honest souls instinctively moved toward clarity and away from confusion. The distance grew naturally, with fewer messages, missed calls, and shrinking circles. Interactions that once seemed routine became uncomfortable, and the reason was simple. People started prioritizing their own well-being. The effort it took to keep up appearances began to drain them, and sensitive people felt the tension long before anyone spoke about it. What made this solitude sting was that it couldn't be blamed on anyone else. There was no hidden agenda, no secret plan to exclude. It was just the natural result of how people respond to persistent negativity. The very outcome intended for you became the reality they now faced, all unfolding through cause and effect. The stress of holding onto falsehoods spilled over into every part of life. Relationships grew strained, daily work became harder, and even health began to reflect the internal battle. Attempts to keep their story together turned into a burden they couldn't shake. What was meant to trap you ended up catching them instead. Each exaggerated tale, each distortion, became another link in the chain holding them back, until the life they'd built was shaped entirely by trying to hide the truth. When the illusion finally broke, the foundation of their reputation revealed itself. It had all been maintained by painting you in the worst possible light. All the respect, influence, and support they'd gathered was built on that narrative. They didn't need to prove anything, just keep enough attention focused on you so their own flaws stayed hidden. But when you stepped away, the cracks in their own story grew impossible to ignore. Conflict didn't disappear. If anything, it deepened, showing everyone the real source. Even as you removed yourself from the chaos, the environment didn't heal. Instead, the same arguments kept cycling, and the peace they promised never arrived. Observers started connecting the dots, realizing that the absence of a scapegoat didn't solve anything. What had been mistaken for patience in you was, in fact, deep wisdom. You knew the power of waiting, of letting the truth rise without resistance. That strategy, rooted in patience, did more than any confrontation ever could. Ever notice how real wisdom shines through without a single word? Your journey is showing everyone that staying true to yourself is the ultimate comeback. You didn't have to shout, plead, or convince. You simply lived in a way that couldn't be ignored, and that quiet power is what's inspiring others right now. You're proof that the truth never needs an audience, it just needs time. There's no armor quite like standing rooted in what's real. Falsehoods constantly beg for attention, demanding patchwork explanations and endless maintenance just to keep the illusion alive. But what's genuine doesn't play by those rules. Truth quietly remains, undisturbed, waiting for everything else to fall away. While you chose patience over performance, you cultivated a kind of inner strength that couldn't be shaken by outside noise. It wasn't about closing off or numbing out. It was about finding a level of certainty so deep that nobody else's chaos could pull you off balance. The moment arrived when everything shifted. Your character outpaced every rumor. Your reputation outgrew the boundaries set by others' expectations. While attempts to limit your reach were busy unraveling in small, closed spaces, you kept building, day by day, far beyond what anyone imagined. Those determined to box you in believed their influence was absolute, thinking a little sabotage could keep you from connecting with the world. But real purpose isn't restricted by geography or small circles. While detractors whispered behind closed doors, you were quietly becoming more focused, more capable, and more connected. And as your momentum grew, people who'd never heard the rumors started seeing what you could really do. Suddenly, the name once used as a warning became a source of inspiration, recognized, quoted, and celebrated in places your critics couldn't reach. Your growth stopped being a local story and became something much bigger. Their whole strategy only worked as long as your influence stayed contained. Once your light reached beyond their borders, the old stories collapsed under the weight of reality. And as you kept rising, another transformation took place. You found yourself able to see those who once tried to bring you down with new eyes. Compassion, real and unconditional, began to grow. Not the surface-level forgiveness that denies the hurt, but the kind that comes from understanding the pain behind the actions. It became clear their attacks weren't about you. They were reflections of their own struggles and lost hopes. You realized the criticism thrown your way was rooted in their battles with fear, regret, and self-rejection. By projecting their pain onto you, they tried to escape what they couldn't accept in themselves. Even more, you found empathy for those who once believed the lies. It's easy to get caught up in a convincing story, especially when it's delivered with conviction. Most people aren't trying to do harm, they're just learning, sometimes the hard way, that not every loud voice is speaking the truth. Your growth wasn't just about rising above, it was about understanding the whole journey, theirs and yours, with open eyes and an even bigger heart. Real talk, your story is living proof that you don't need to win every argument or convince every critic. Sometimes, just becoming the best version of yourself makes every rumor irrelevant. If you've ever felt alone on this path, remember, you're not just changing your own story. You're opening doors for a whole new kind of honesty, and people are watching you light the way. There's a unique strength that comes when you outgrow old limits, the kind that makes outside judgment lose all power. Suddenly, those who tried to define you realize their opinions carry less weight than background chatter in a busy street. It's not just that their version of events doesn't match reality. It's that they never understood what they were looking at to begin with. What unsettled them most wasn't the risk of exposure, but the sense of being left behind as you kept rising. You became the living contrast, not just between truth and fiction, but between people who evolve and those who cling to their old masks. Each time someone looked past the noise and saw you as you really are, the difference was obvious. Your journey wasn't about being perfect, but about owning every lesson, showing your real self, and letting others see that realness up close. Even those who once doubted found themselves rethinking everything, and eventually, many became your supporters. Your life attracted those who valued substance, not just appearances. People with open minds gravitated to your side, drawn by the way you faced setbacks and turned them into stepping stones. You found community in those who saw beyond surfaces, people hungry for the kind of sincerity that can't be faked. It became clear, The world is filled with people waiting for someone brave enough to live without pretense. What truly set you apart was time itself. Not a single big moment, but a slow, steady unveiling, a process that revealed who was genuine and who was playing a role. You didn't need grand gestures or dramatic takedowns. Time quietly dissolved every untruth, layer by layer, until only what was real remained. Day after day, your presence proved them wrong, not by confrontation, but simply by existing without apology. Every choice you made, every peaceful step forward, became its own answer to the stories they tried to tell. Time brought your truth into focus for anyone willing to look. And as the dust settled, the final act wasn't about revenge or humiliation. Instead, your growth stood as an invitation, proof that anyone can choose a better path. Some will follow your example, using your transformation as a guide out of their own confusion. Others may dig in deeper, isolating themselves even as the world around them grows more open to authenticity. The bigger picture? Your journey is more than personal. It's a ripple in a much wider awakening, a sign that, slowly but surely, honesty and growth are becoming the new standard.